Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all here in this session at TNV Academy today. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce the speaker of today's session, Mr. Srinivasan Sitaraman, who is going to talk to us about implementation of ISO 45001 standard, that is Occupational Health and Safety Management System. In this webinar today, Mr. Sitaraman will discuss this topic in detail along with some real-life examples he has experienced in the industry. Our distinguished speaker, Mr. Sitaraman, has done his post-graduation in chemistry from Annamalai University, India. He is a lead auditor in ISO 9001, 14001, 45001, and 50001 standards. He has an industrial experience of around 30 plus years in field of manufacturing of non-ferrous alloys, lamp components, and primary and secondary batteries, and has worked in countries such as India, South Africa, and Oman. He has been imparting training to a number of organizations, entrepreneurs, and executives on various topics related to ISO standards and their certification and implementation. It was just a brief introduction of our guest speaker today. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Srinivasan Sitaraman. I may request Mr. Sitaraman now to please start the session on implementation of ISO 45001.
A very good evening to all of you present in this webinar, and thank you to TNV Academy for allowing me to present this webinar. Once again, it's a warm welcome to all of you. And today we'll be talking about the topic steps to implementation of ISO 45001-2018. This is for occupational health and safety management system in various organizations. So we'll be looking at the details. The topics will be, first I'll give an introduction about ISO 45001, how it's all started, then what are all the steps to implement this ISO 45000 in your organization. And then at the end of the session, it will last about 40 minutes or so, question and answer session, where all your questions will be put in the chat box and moderator will be giving one by one and I will be answering those things. Hope this arrangement is okay with you. So we'll start with the session. First, we'll start with the introduction to ISO 45001-2018. So what is this standard? ISO 45000. It's an international standard for occupational health and safety management system. Okay, and this is developed by Technical Committee TC 283. So this is a technical committee responsible for developing the occupational health and safety management systems. So for every standard, ISO has got a technical committee who will be responsible for developing the standard. So they will be doing it. This has replaced the OHS 18001 standard in 2018. So earlier there was a British standard that was called Occupational Health and Safety Assessment Series, and otherwise called OHS 18001, and that was a standard known for occupational health and safety management systems. So in 2018, ISO has adopted the standard and then added some more features towards integrating all other management system standards. So they released it as ISO 45001, and that's what organizations are going for now. ISO 45001 provides a framework for improving the occupational health and safety performance. When I say occupational health and safety, always remember it's not the general health and safety. It is health and safety related to your work. For example, if I give you an example, as a patient, you go to a doctor and you take X-ray. You lie on the bed and take the X-ray. It has got radiation, but you are taking it for your own benefit, for diagnosis and treatment. Whereas the person who is giving the radiation, the X-ray technician, need not be receiving those radiation because he's working for the hospital. He's an employee there. So he's always standing behind the lead shield and giving you the radiation. When he is sick, he may also lie on bed and receive radiation patient. But as an employee, he is not supposed to receive those kind of radiations while at work. So that's why it is related to work. So that's why we call it occupational health and safety performance. So that involves prevention of injury and ill health. So both are important. Injury and ill health, that has to be prevented, and also eliminate the hazards and minimizing risk. We cannot eliminate risk. Risk will always be there. It's called residual risk because it is highly impossible to make the risk zero. But we can go on eliminating one by one whatever hazards we are seeing so that the risk will be going on reducing and it will be minimizing in organizations and come to an acceptable or tolerable level. Also, the main thing in this standard is it is for the employees and by the employees and of the employees. That means workers will be involved in the standard heavily we have to show evidence of their participation and consultation in various spheres so that the standard becomes very effective in implementation and maintenance. So that is one of the most important points we need to note. Okay. Now the concept of occupational health and safety management system. An organization is responsible for the occupational health and safety of workers and others. So organization is responsible. That means the top management who is running the organization, he will be or she will be ultimately responsible for the occupational health and safety of the workers. Workers, we understand the employees and others. Others means the people, interested parties. They may not be present in the factory or wherever office they are working. Maybe their family members also. In case, if you look at it, some companies where there are a lot of chemicals handled, so people may not use the same uniform what they are having at in the office outside, because there will be some contamination which they cannot carry to their homes and then contaminate the other family members. So indirectly they are also impacted. That's why if you see big factories always have the uniform, their washrooms, they remove it and then put it for wash, and they go outside in civilian clothing, because we want to protect our employees' family members from any contamination coming from the factory. So like that, there are various other interested parties. They also need to be considered along with workers regarding occupational health and safety. Now, this includes employees, contractors, their workers, suppliers, service providers, even visitors coming into the factory or organization. They also need to be protected, because they are totally not aware of what is going on in the organization. They may be visiting, and consultants and third-party auditors, legal authorities, representatives, etc., who can be affected by its activities. So that's why we should not think worker means people who are employed on the roles of the company. Anybody, any human being within the factory premises, if it is certified ISO 45000, all need to be protected. So that is very important, whether paid or non-paid. For example, students are coming into the facility for gaining knowledge. They may not get any monetary benefit, but they also need to be considered as workers and given the adequate protection for them. Okay. The responsibility includes promoting and protecting their physical and mental health. Physical health, everybody understands, it's very easy. Mental health also is very important focus in the new standard, where mental health is nowadays taking a lot of toll, especially in organizations. A lot of IT industries are going for this standard, where there is no equipment or something, only laptop and human beings. But the work pressure sometimes becomes too much, that people are taking very extreme decisions because they are not able to bear the mental tension, the deadlines, the pressure from the delivery point of view, people leaving the organization, and the leadership is under a tremendous pressure to complete the projects in deadline. So like that, you may not see outside, but there is so much cooking inside, and that time sometimes it goes to the extreme end, and some people take extreme decisions. So physical health and mental health, both are to be important and both are to be protected. The aim of ISO 45001 is otherwise called the intended outcome. That means if I implement this standard, what is the result coming out of it? That is two things. One is to prevent work-related injury and ill health to workers. That means people should not get injured while working, and also they should not get any chronological problems, like chronic problems at a later point of their life. They may not have any ill health because of the operations which they are involved in the factory. That's what we call ill health. Ill health may not be manifesting immediately. The injury will be acute. You can see the blood coming, broken bones, everything. But the ill health will be silent. It will be a silent killer. The cancer problems when people are working in radiation areas, and also people working in high noise areas will have hearing impairment, and people inhaling some kind of dust and other things will have a lung diseases at the later part of life. So that's why ill health also to be considered along with injury, both to the workers. Second thing is to provide safe and healthy workplaces, so that people are motivated to come to the organization and contribute effectively. They need to have a safe and healthy working environment. Healthy working environment means a kind of good working conditions. There is no too much of workload for someone, other person is sitting simply. Psychological workloads, harassment, sexual harassment, bullying, all these are coming into picture. So that's why psychological factors also need to be considered when you talk of healthy workplace. It is just not giving an air-conditioned atmosphere and having a lot of politics and backbiting happening in the organizations. That is not a good working environment. Okay, it is critically important for the organization to eliminate hazards and minimize risk. We already talked about it by taking effective preventive and protective measures and take advantage of OHS opportunities. That means any opportunity with regard to improving the awareness of safety among employees, improving the technology, improving the equipment, and other safety precautions. So these are all opportunities we can avail so that we can improve our occupational health and safety performance. One thing very important to note here is the standard 45001 does not address the issues such as product safety, property damage, or environmental impact. This is purely addressing the safety of workers while they are working at the organization, safety and health of the workers, okay, while they are working. Beyond the risk, they provide to workers and other relevant interested parties. So only, for example, simple example would be Samsung air conditioning, manufacturing company. The company may not be air conditioned, but the product what is coming out is air conditioning the rooms and houses. So same way, the product safety is not assured by the ISO 45001 standard. It is the people working in the organization, they have to work safely and they will be protected from injuries and ill health. That is what we are focusing here. Same way, quality 9001 standard, ISO 9001 does not assure quality of product. It only assures the quality of management in the organization. As a byproduct, you are getting quality products and services. But per se, it is not addressing the quality of product. Same way, here also it is not addressing the safety of the products they are manufacturing. It is only the health and safety of the employees. Okay. Now the key difference between OSHA's 18001 and 45001, we need to understand. We could have continued with 18001 OSHA standard. Why we adopted ISO 45001? So that is very important. First and foremost, the structure. The structure is Annex SL high-level structure, which is common to all other management system standards right from 2013. So it is easy for organizations to integrate many management system standard into one integrated management system. So that is possible by having this ISO 4001. Whereas OSHA's 18000 was a British standard, it did not have the same class structure. So that's why ISO adopted and made it as per the ISO high-level structure. Second thing is management commitment. In this ISO 45001, increased level of commitment from management is expected. For everything what is going wrong in the organization, the management will be accountable. Ultimately, the buck stops there. That's why they have to be very cautious in implementing things and they have to take responsibility for everything. The stronger leadership role is insisted in the ISO 45001 standard. Worker involvement, employee training and education to identify risk and help create a successful safety program, allowing broader employee participation. That's what we call worker participation or consultation and participation. This is very, very important hallmark of this new standard, whereas OSHA's 18001 was not insisting on this. A very small group of people, maybe a safety department or safety representative, they were only involved in this whole thing, whereas the entire broader participation of employees was not insisted on the 18001 OSHA standard, whereas ISO 45000 insists on worker involvement. Then the final one is the risk versus hazard. ISO 45001 follows a preventative process requiring hazards and risks to be evaluated and remedied. Remedied means controlled before they cause accidents and injuries. Whereas OSHA's 18001 was focusing only on the hazard control. Hazard control is not going to eliminate the risk. So we have to focus on the risk coming out of the hazard. That's why ISO 45001 is a risk-based thinking model where preventive actions are more, instead even before actions are happening. And that's why risk-based thinking is a much better approach than OSHA's 18001, which only focuses on hazards and not that much on the risk. Okay, that is a reactive approach. Okay, so now the roadmap to ISO 45000, how this all developed. First, we had a OSHA's 18001 in 1999. That was a British standard that was adopted by all the industries. Before that, there was no standard on occupational health and safety. So that was a very good standard and that had all the elements. So all industries adopted. Many companies went for this and then they upgraded the standard to 18001 2007 version also. So only from 2015 onwards, the deliberations are going on to make a ISO standard for occupational health and safety. So they all decided, they looked at various standards and they felt the OSHA's 18001 had most of the elements which are aligning with the ISO philosophy. So they adopted it and then added some more principles which we talked about, like worker participation, increased top management involvement, and then risk-based thinking, and also the high-level structure. These are all included in that, and the standard was released as ISO 45001 in 2018. So organizations who are already OHS 18001 certified, they were given 3 years time to upgrade to the new standard. That's why from 2018 to 2021, you see a lot of transitions happening. But now this OHS 18000 standard is no longer valid. So nobody is going for it because everybody goes for ISO 45001. Now the process approach, the PDCA, which is a hallmark of all the ISO management system standards, is also applicable in this ISO 45001 standard. Here again, plan what all things involved in the planning, the policy to be signed by the top management, which talks about what all things we will be doing to prevent the injury and ill health to the employees, how to eliminate the hazards and minimize risk for the employees. All that will be included in the policy. Then they also will consider the external internal issues affecting the workers and interested parties, so that they have to address those risks and mitigate them and avail the opportunities. Then the main thing here is the HERA, which is hazards identification and assessment and risk control. So we identify the hazard, then assess the risk coming out of it, and then try to see how we can control that risk. So that is what is the main focus here. And then risk and opportunity as the management system, we also need to consider. And legal and other requirements. As you say, any standard, legal and other requirements, fulfilling it is very important, complying with it 100%. So here also safety related, occupational health related, legal and other requirements also to be considered before we implement the standard. And then after looking at the hazards and the risk coming out of it, we have to look at what are all the objectives we have to take so that our safety performance can improve. So some of the objectives may need a occupational health and safety management program, which needs more than one person involved, and a kind of time frame will be there. It will be run as a project. So that's why it's a management program. And last but not the least, the worker participation has to be insisted. It should be built in the planning itself. Then you go and execute, where you put a structure and responsibility for all the people, and also have a committee constituted which will be focusing on these health and safety matters. Also, they will be involved in the implementation of the standard. And all employees need to be given awareness training and improve their competence, because they may be working in that machine for so long. But now we are looking at, in a structured way, what are all the hazards, how to identify them, how to assess the risk. So this involves some sort of training and also awareness about this new standard. So that's why they will be more competent to work in those respective areas. So training is very important. Then document everything. As usual, all the ISO management systems insist on documentation for consistent performance of the employees and various shifts and various spheres. Then operation control. Wherever we have found the risk is very high, we need to have operational controls in place so that the risk is mitigated and kept under control. And then we also conduct some emergency preparedness and response drills. So in case of real emergency like an accident or fire, how to evacuate people quickly and orderly manner so that there is no panic and stampede happening in the organization. That's why emergency preparedness response is very effective in preparing or perfecting our response in case of a real emergency. So these are the action points we do. Then we also check whether we have done as per the plan. In checking, we do performance monitoring measurement. Here also we have monitoring and measurement. Monitoring is without use of instruments, like how many accidents have happened, how many first aid cases. They can just count it and see and then monitor it. Whereas measurement, how much is the noise level in this area, what is the kind of harmful gases getting emitted from this stack, so that we have to measure them by using some devices. So naturally the calibration of those devices also need to be considered, so for ensuring the validity of the measurements. Then all these measurements, whatever we do, we have to record it and keep the record safely, so evidence of following the instructions and doing the monitoring measurement. Then we also conduct internal external audits to ensure our systems are performing as per the plan and then as per the standard requirements. Then if there is any incident happening, we have to investigate them and take necessary corrective actions by addressing the root cause so that they don't get repeated again. So these are the things we do in the checking phase. Then the improvement phase will be the management is taking note of what all things happened and then what corrective actions have been taken, whether they are effective, so that these mistakes will be getting eliminated one by one, and we are going into the next cycle of planning with a better preparedness, because we have learned from our mistakes, so we'll be better prepared for the future. So this cycle goes on clockwise, when it happens, and the top management is involved in the entire process. It is just not planning, the entire plan, do, check, act. Top management is the center of everything. Okay, so then we look at this high level structure here. There are 3 clauses. It's all 10 clauses we have seen in all other standards. So first 3 clauses are for just reference only, for information only. Whereas the clause 4, the context of the organization, the leadership and worker participation. This is very special to the standard. Normally all management system standards have only leadership. But here you see worker participation is along with the leadership, they have been mentioned. That means they are giving that much priority, that much importance for worker participation along with the top management. So that's why we have to see consultation and participation of employees in various spheres of the standard implementation. Then the planning part of it, and then the support to implement this effectively, and then operation of this particular occupational health and safety management system, and performance evaluation, the checking mechanism, and then the improvement. Wherever we find non-conformances, we corrective action we take, and then we improve on our safety performance. Now this clause 4 to clause 10, these are the clauses where requirements have been specified, which we need to fulfill for getting a successful audit. So that is what auditors will be looking for under each clause, what type of requirements have been implemented and fulfilled by the organization. So now the PDCA, here if you look at here, it's more or less same as all other management system standards. 4, 5, 6, 7 clauses are involved in planning. Then 8 is operation, check is performance evaluation, clause 9, and act improvement. But now you see only one change which you can see here is the consultation and participation of workers, which is not present in any other standard. Along with the leadership, that 5.4 clause is very important. So we have to show evidences of consultation and participation of workers in various areas so that this standard can be effectively implemented. Okay. Now when we do that, the continual improvement automatically happens. We result in improved OHS performance. When I say occupational health and safety performance means reduced accidents or reduced incidents and reduced first aid cases. Even hazards are getting identified more and more. Everybody is involved in that. So naturally, when you look at reducing the hazards and improving the situation, so the safety performance will be improving in the organization. Okay. So this is all about ISO 45001, just an introduction. Now your organization is going to implement this standard. So what all things we need to look at it. Before going ahead with the implementation, we just need to understand the basic terms and definitions which are going to be used in this standard. So I'll just cover that before. First of all, just a basic understanding about safety. People may say you have to be safe and all, but what is safety? If you look at it, the definition is very clear in ISO. It is the process of eliminating or reducing risk to an acceptable level. So it doesn't say we have to make it zero risk. It is not impossible. It is just impossible. So we have to eliminate or reducing risk to acceptable level. Means eliminate, only one way we can eliminate risk is that hazard is completely gone, that operation is totally removed. Then only we can say it is eliminated. But if it is there, we can only reduce it to certain level so that we can work in that area safely by having the precautions to be taken, the machine guarding, the PPEs can be worn or other controls can be put in. So the risk will be minimized to a great extent. Only if the machine is totally taken off, then we can say we can eliminate that risk. Otherwise, it will always be there. That is called residual risk or tolerable risk. So safety is the process of eliminating one by one or reducing the risk to acceptable level so that we can operate safely in the particular area. Hazard is anything which has a potential to cause harm. A simple example will be, if there is a electric wire which is exposed, it's a live wire. So naturally that's a hazard. Nobody will be touching it if it is clearly mentioned that there is a wire which, otherwise unknowingly people may come in contact with it and they may get electrocuted. But otherwise it is at a potential to cause harm. Till somebody comes in contact with that, it is not going to cause any damage. So that's why it's an electrical hazard. So what we need to do, we have to address it, we have to insulate it, or we have to remove the power supply so that we can eliminate that hazard completely and eliminate the risk from that point of view. So that is what is a hazard. Now the risk is the likelihood of that hazard causing harm. So the electricity or the live wire, if somebody is coming in contact with it, he will be electrocuted. So there are two scenarios here. One wire is coming from the top, which is live, and the other there is an extension board in the floor, which is also not properly closed, and there is a live wire coming out of it. So if you look at both of them, the likelihood of the electrocution happening on the floor is much, much higher compared to what is on the wall, because nobody is going to touch it intentionally, whereas unknowingly, unintentionally, people may step on that wire on the extension cord and they may get electrocuted. So the likelihood will be basically the risk likelihood of that hazard causing the harm. So that's where we will say the bottom one is more likely to cause electrocution compared to the top one. So our priority will be changing which one to be attacked first. That's what will be decided based on the risk assessment. So this is what we have to understand. Incident, an event that does not result in personal injury but may result in property damage. That's what ISO 45000 calls as a incident. Incident means nothing has happened to anybody, but some property damage may be there or may not be there. Like suddenly a fan falling from the ceiling, it just fell on the floor and nothing happened to anybody. Luckily, nobody was under it. So it is an incident. Maybe the fan may be damaged or may not be damaged. It can be fit back again. But if somebody is slightly injured in the process, then it's an accident. ISO is not using this word accident in the standard. Very casually, it is referring that sometimes if somebody is injured, sometimes it is called accident. So otherwise, I would not use the word accident in the presentation. It is just for clarity purpose. I have given here all accidents are incidents, but all incidents need not be accidents. That means accident is a smaller sphere, incident is a bigger sphere. So accident are a subset of incident. If there is a person who is going to be injured or having ill health, then the incident becomes automatically accident. Our aim is to focus on the incident so we can avoid accidents. Okay, that's why ISO is talking of incident investigation. Even somebody is injured, they call it incident investigation and not accident investigation. Because our colloquial terminology is, we understand accident means if somebody is injured and all. Even in incidents, injury is possible, but then we have to investigate them. Risk assessment. It is the method to identify hazard and then analyze and evaluate the risk associated with the hazard. That's what we discussed earlier. Hazard and risk, when they are there, we have to assess the risk coming out of the hazard so that we can prioritize which one we need to attack first so that our safety performance can improve. So that is what is the method, a quantitative method we can implement so that we can filter out the significant hazards for further action to mitigate. Okay. Then a worker, this is a very important definition. Earlier OSHA's 18001 did not have the umbrella definition. Now it is very clearly, it says person performing work related activity that are under the control of the organization. That means everybody who are all in the organization at the particular point of time, including managers, paid, unpaid personnel, visitors at site, contract personnel, casual laborers, all human beings, I would say, inside the factory premises are considered as workers. So worker means you do not consider the people working with the machines. Even white collar worker, blue collar, management, top management, MD of the organization, all are considered worker because life is precious for all. That's why ISO 45000 puts everybody on the same platform, considering that all have to be protected, including people coming as visitors, students also included in this. Okay, participation and consultation, these two are very important. Whereas participation talks about involvement in decision making, like people have to be involved when you take decisions, so they are party to it. Whereas consultation is seeking and considering views before making decision. So you call for a meeting, you take the views of the people, and then you implement your decision, but there will be a consideration given for their views. So both are important. You have to be participating, and also the employees have to be consulted in the organization. The main thing is the management shall determine and remove or minimize barriers to participation and consultation. If there is a safety committee meeting and if there is urgent work, the work can wait. The safety committee meeting needs to be attended by the employee. So that's how management has to clear-cut say, if there is anything related to safety being organized, that will take the priority so that these kind of barriers to participation can be eliminated. So nobody will feel bad, that I am not able to attend my work and I am going for the meeting, because it should be a top management commitment, clearly giving the directions to everybody so that the barriers can be minimized. Okay. So now we look at the steps towards implementing this ISO 45001 2018. Here again, there are 5 steps we have put together. We will go through it one by one. Preparation, basically preparing the organization to take this standard and establish it for implementation. Then there are a lot of documentation involved in the process. And then implementation phase, which is quite a long phase. I would say preparation not take more than 20 days. Documentation will be going side by side, but the implementation phase where the training, everything is involved, that's where it takes the most of the time. And then the internal audit and the management review will be conducted before we call the certification body for the certification audit. So these are the 5 steps. We will look at it one by one. First is preparation. Here, what do we do? Approach to implementation. How do we want to implement it? So we need to have a sensitization among employees that we are going for this certification, ISO 45001 standard, and what are all things they need to know. Maybe forming a core committee or maybe a team which will be involved in this process. Also, we have to define the occupational health and safety management system scope. That means we have to cover everything because this is talking about the boundary. There cannot be any clause which can be excluded or any department which can be excluded, because when you are talking about even visitors coming into the plant included as worker, so that means the scope has to be very clear. The physical boundary of the organization, that has to be mentioned in the documentation. And then the formation of the health and safety committee. This also is a Factory Act's requirement. If there is an organization, a certain number of people are there, so we need to have a health and safety committee, and then there will be a management appointees and then nomination from employees. So the same committee can be involved in the implementation of the ISO 45001 standard. So we can evidence consultation and participation of workers in the process. Okay. Then role and responsibility of each and every person to be clearly defined. So the safety department, who will be the safety manager, what are all the safety representative, what are their roles, what are the committee members going to do apart from meeting, what all other things they can do to improve the safety performance. So that kind of role, responsibility, clarity has to be given to all the people involved. Then most important is top management support, because this standard is saying anything going wrong, top management is responsible. That's why their support and their complete blessing for this implementation is very important. So they will be allocating the resources, financial, equipment, infrastructure, everything will be given so that it is effectively implemented. And then we have to conduct a gap analysis. The gap analysis, basically, you may have some kind of systems in place. No factory will have no safety system. It's not like that. So there will be some systems already in place, some documentation. Now we have to take the ISO 45001 requirement and assess against what is the availability and what is the requirement. So that is identified as a gap, and that can be done by a consultant, or if you are trained in the ISO 45001 standard, you can also assess the gap and then come up with the action plan to bridge the gap. Okay. Then we finalize the project plan and timeline, how long it will take and what type of resources we need. Are we going to engage the consultants, or are we going to do it ourselves? So that project plan will decide everything. And this is the preparation phase where only the key people will be involved. Now we have to roll it out. For that, we need documentation. So this documentation phase, we talk about documented information. That means keeping documents which are instructions, procedures, and also records for evidence of following the instructions. So both will be involved in this phase. And then it's important documentation as per ISO 45001. There is a list I'm going to show you. So that also has to be looked at, and we have to fulfill all those kind of documents. Then the policy, occupational health and safety policy has to be established. It can be a standalone policy, or if you have got already a 9001 quality management system or other systems, we can integrate these policies and make a one integrated management system policy. And the scope statement, like what we are going for certification. So under clause 4.3 of the standard, the scope has to be mentioned very clearly, and it should be maintained as a documented information. Then we need to have the hazard identification and risk assessment register, HERA register. This is also very important document. And then objectives and occupational health and safety management programs to address the significant hazards which we have identified through the HERA process. Then procedures, work instructions for the employees so that they work in their area safely. If there is already instruction available, we can include the safety precautions in the same work instruction and make it as an integrated work instruction covering quality, environment, and safety together. and then forms for recording the parameters what they are monitoring during the process, implementation process. So some of the mandatory documentation I'm giving here along with the clause reference so that you can understand, there are totally 17 mandatory documents which are suggesting for all organizations to implement. Scope under 4.3 clause, it is important. Then occupational health and safety policy under 5.2, and role, responsibility and authority under 6.3, and risk and opportunity actions to address them. So under 6.1.1, that is also important. Then methodology and criteria for the assessment of occupational health and safety risk. How are we going to assess the risk and hazards? That has to be clearly upfront mentioned. So that methodology has to be documented. Then determination of legal and other requirements. So that any organization going for ISO 45001, any safety related, occupational health and safety related requirements from legal point of view has to be determined. So under this clause. Then planning to achieve objectives, OHS objectives, that is as per 6.2.2. Then competency of employees, the training records to improve their competency, that has to be maintained under 7.2. Then communication, whatever communication we give, all those records have to be maintained. These are all very important communication with regard to injuries reported or emergency drills conducted. All that communication we have to give it to the relevant authorities. So that is also to be maintained. Operational plan control, the procedures, whatever we talked about, that will be there. Emergency preparedness and response under clause 8.2. This is a very important document. We have to show that we have conducted the drills and perfected our response. Then performance evaluation, including calibration, like whatever measurements we are doing for the safety point of view, health and safety point of view, those measuring instruments need to be calibrated. So those records along with the measurements, we have to keep it as a record. Evaluation of compliance to legal requirements. So we have to show that we have complied to various legal requirements by keeping the records of compliance. Okay. Then internal audit, the entire audit program, schedule, notes, reports, all that have to be kept in the documentation. Then management review, evidence of top management reviewing the progress of the implementation and effectiveness, that will be kept as a management review minutes records. Then incident, non-conformity and corrective action. Suppose any incident happened, it has to be investigated along with the worker participation, and the corrective actions, whatever is identified, effectively implemented, and effectiveness has to be evaluated. All that records have to be shown as per 10.2. Then continual improvement, whatever we are doing in safety performance, we have to showcase for the auditors and also for our own benefit. We keep those records as per 10.3. So these are all some of the mandatory documentation organization need to keep for certification process. Then we go to implementation phase. Here we are doing first and foremost consultation and participation of workers. So we have to ensure that in various ways we can do during the implementation phase. One is training the employees so that they become aware of the safety precautions to be taken in their respective areas. New employees, even old employees who are maybe having a lot of experience, but then they have to unlearn certain things and learn new things when you are putting new equipment and processes. That's why training for everyone is important. Then we have to do this hazards identification and risk assessment and risk control. This is a very important documentation as far as ISO 45001 is concerned. Then communication of significant hazards. Once we have done the assessment, we identify some of the significant hazards the organization has got, and that has to be communicated to all the employees involved so that they are more careful in their operations. Then we introduce the procedures, work instructions which we developed in the documentation phase, and then put in operational controls in place where we look at what all hierarchy of controls we have to have so that the risk can be minimized in the organization. Then we monitor measuring of the incidents as well as measuring certain parameters from the occupational health and safety point of view. Those things have to be maintained. And then calibration of those measuring equipment, very important to ensure validity of the measurements. And then health and safety committee meetings. That is also in the implementation phase. We have to have meetings. So we are involving employees, workers, and also listening to them and considering their views. So then we are trying to implement them. So that's why this is going to improve the safety performance. Then keep records of the minutes of meeting and all the monitoring, measurement, everything we have to keep records. Then conduct emergency response drills to perfect our response in case of a real emergency. We should not have an emergency, but we are prepared for the emergency so that in case something happens, something goes wrong, we are not panicking. We are giving orderly response to the emergency. That's why the drills are going to help us a lot. Okay. So still in implementation, again, I'm insisting on these two things, consultation and participation. In consultation, we are seeking the workers' views and considering them before making a decision. So the decision will be taken by top management, but there will be some consideration given to the workers' point of view before taking the decision. That's why they have to be consulted, so they feel they are listened to, will be motivated to contribute because they are part of the organization, because they are being consulted. In participation, active participation in joint decision making. Certain areas, workers will be participating in the decision making itself. So we look at certain things like that. Consultation implies a two-way communication involving dialogue and exchange. So when you conduct a meeting, you listen to the workers' representatives, workers' views, and then decisions are taken. So these are recorded in the minutes of meeting. So that is a two-way dialogue. Now you see, these are the various areas where we are doing the consultation, determining the needs and expectation of interested parties. Means what the employees want. You will have a discussion in the safety committee, health and safety committee, and listen to them, and they can be implemented if it is possible for the organization. So that's why it is one of the things. Then establishing the occupational health and safety policy. Before releasing the policy, we need to discuss the policy with the workers. So they have to be consulted whether it is adequately addressing the requirements or not. So after taking their inputs, we can review the policy, revise the policy before implementing it. Determining how to fulfill legal and other requirements. So again, we are consulting with them so that it is effectively implemented. Establishing objectives and planning to achieve them. For that also, we need the consultation process. Determining applicable controls for outsourcing, procurement and contractors. So when we give some outsourcing, we can also consult the employees what kind of activities we can outsource and what kind of controls we can establish, so that they are also aware of these kind of outsourcing activities and it will not be a surprise for them. So that is why this is very important. In determining what needs to be monitored, measured and evaluated, and ensuring continual improvement. What suggestions they can give for continual improvement, like near miss cases they can report, or safety suggestions they can report. So these are all consultation process. In participation, identifying hazard and assessing the risk and opportunity. This is very, very important. HIRA, hazard identification risk assessment. There, worker participation is very important. Determining actions to eliminate hazards and reduce risk. Once the risk is identified, they have to give the suggestions and how we can minimize this risk and eliminate the hazard. And control measures for effective implementation and use. Investigating incidents. Again, suppose somebody is injured, we have to investigate the incident. So we have to involve the workers working in that area so that the process becomes a meaningful exercise. Reviewing the OHS policy and objectives. So once policy is established, we have to review them. So there they can participate and give their feedback on that. Then developing new or improved arrangements and procedures, OHS arrangement procedures. Then participation in EHS committees. So these are the ways they can participate. So we have to see each and every place how we can show evidence of participation. Okay. Now we will come to the hazards. When you want to do the hazards identification and risk assessment, you need to know what are all the type of hazards available. So there are hazards which we have listed. Almost 99% of the hazards are falling into these categories. Gravity, which anything which goes up has to come down. So if somebody is working at height, it is a gravity related hazard. Motion hazard means moving objects, vehicles, there can be a collision, accident, so there is a hazard. Mechanical hazard, machinery, there will be pinch points, there will be crush points, and the machine guarding, if it is not there, there can be injuries there. Mechanical movement hazard. Then electrical hazard, everybody understands electrocution. Biological hazard, food contamination. Even COVID-19 is one of the biggest biological hazards we have seen in the recent years. So these kind of hazards. Then pressure, something which is under high pressure, the compressed gases and cylinders under pressure. That is can be pressure related hazard. The injury can be very severe there. Temperature, hot surfaces is going to have burn injury. Sometimes pressure and temperature as a combination. Steam, which is having high pressure and high temperature. So that is really a worst scenario if you are exposed to steam. So we need to be aware of that as hazard. Chemical hazards, people are handling a lot of chemicals. So there are various material safety data sheets available. So it will tell what type of hazards that chemical can manifest in the body. So we need to be aware of it. Then radiation hazards, alpha, beta, gamma radiation. If there is a radioactive source used in inspection or any kind of other X-ray machinery or something is there, so this will be radiation hazard. And then sound means acceptable sound is music, unacceptable sound is noise. It will not be pleasure for the ears, and it will give a hearing impairment over a period of time. It will have a problem for our hearing ability. So these are the hazards we have identified. Then we have to assess them. So how do we do that? First, we have to inventorize the task, what all activities we are doing in our area. That's where worker participation is important. They will tell what all things they are doing on a day-to-day basis. That's what I call inventory of tasks. Then we look at, for each and every task, what type of hazards they are exposed to. So that will lead to identification of the hazard, so that it is a team effort, so it will be effective. Okay. Then we look at the consequences. Suppose somebody is exposed to the hazard, what can be the consequence? So we need to look at what will happen to him. Because somebody is falling from height, we know the consequence will be broken bones or even head injury or even fatality for that matter. So it will be possible. So we have to identify those consequences. Then identify the existing control limit. Means in the organization, currently what is there, so that this hazard is not directly exposed to the employee or worker. So those are called identifying existing control limits. Maybe for the working at height, may have a seat belt or a proper ladder will be there, or railings will be provided, safety shoes are there. So these are some of the controls you are having, and a proper vision, so that the lighting arrangement, everything is perfect, and people are also aware of working at height, training is given. So these are the current controls we have got. So now you pass these consequences through the filter of controls and then evaluate the risk. Suppose a person is knowing everything, what will be the risk from this hazard if he is working at height? So we have to evaluate that. If there was no control, you can imagine it is going to be a disaster. People are going to get injured left, right, and center. But we have some controls in the organization currently. With the controls, we evaluate the risk. So then we say whether it is low or high based on our rating process. If it is low, we call it acceptable risk, and that person is eligible to work in that area because the risk is assessed as acceptable risk or tolerable risk. We are never saying risk is zero. We are saying it is acceptable. Suppose you find that after filtering through the control plan, the risk is still high as per our rating mechanism. Then what we have to do, it is not acceptable situation. We have to review the control plan. So the current existing control plan has to be reviewed, so that this process goes on cycles till the risk becomes green. That means acceptable risk. This is what we call hazards identification and risk assessment, and the process of risk control to acceptable levels. So this is very important in organizations. Now implementation, we have to plan actions, whatever risk we identified, actions to address the risk and opportunities coming out of HERA risk and opportunity registers. Then legal and other requirements, what type of risk they are putting on the organization. So we need to evaluate them, and we have to comply with them so that the risk is mitigated. If suppose they say a particular gas level has to be less than 5 ppm, so that is a risk they are posing from the regulatory point of view. So we have to see our operations, what is the current level and what we need to do to reduce it, so that employees are comfortably working, and we are also complying to the legal requirement. Then prepare and respond to emergency situations. We talked about emergency drill, how to prepare for a real emergency. So most of the time they have seen when fire accident happens, more people die because of stampede and rather than burn injuries, because people get panicking. So to avoid this panic, we want to have an orderly response to the emergency. We want to do these drills so that we perfect our response. Okay. Integrate and implement actions to business process. That means we don't want to do it as a parallel activity. Whatever we are doing, it should be integrated into the management system. So when management is reviewing, along with the business performance, the market share, the profit, they also need to review the safety and occupational health of employees. So that is why we call integrated review by the top management, so that it will be effective. And also the top management will evaluate the effectiveness of actions taken, whatever actions they have taken to mitigate the risk. Organization to consider best practices in the industry. When there is a similar industry, we should look at the benchmarking. What is the best industry in that particular field? and then try to achieve those kind of safety standards. Then technological options, if there is a better equipment which is going to be preventing accidents, which has got a inbuilt safety mechanisms, we should think of that. Then financial, operational, business requirements based on the finances available with the company and the operational and business requirement, that has to be considered. Okay, now we look at the internal audit, the fourth step in the total implementation process. Here we are doing internal audit, and then we are following it up with the management review. So before doing internal audit, we have to train the internal auditors. Already they may be auditors for quality management system or environmental system. We have to add the occupational health and safety elements by conducting a internal audit training as per ISO 45001. So they understand the clause references and what type of things they need to look for. So they will be trained so they can audit along with the quality and environmental audit as an integrated audit. Then set up the audit program. It can be an integrated audit program with the audit schedule and everything lined out by the management representative. So the audit schedule will be there. Then ensure impartiality. A person working in mechanical maintenance cannot audit mechanical maintenance because it will not be proper. It will be conflict of interest. So that's why we need to ensure impartiality by allocating the auditors accordingly, so that there is no clash between their audit department and their own department. Documented information of audit, right from schedule, audit plan, and audit reports and non-conformance report, everything has to be maintained as a documented information. Some will be document, some will be record. Okay, both will be there. Checklist also has to be prepared. It will help auditors to conduct the audit in an effective manner, saving a lot of time and keeping their focus. So we have to develop the checklist before going for the audit so that we are prepared for the audit. Okay, audit with a view towards improvement. This for all the internal audits, irrespective of whatever management system you do, our aim should be to improve the current situation. So that should be the aim while doing the audit. That's why we should look for facts and not finding faults. When somebody is doing something wrong, we say we should not be going after them. We should understand why it is being done and look at the systemic causes and put it as a non-conformance. Okay. Then the main important thing before going for certification is management review. That means we have to conduct at least one management review before external audit is conducted, so that we review the current internal audit findings and take the necessary corrective actions. So when we face the external audit, it goes smoothly without any hiccup. So that's why management review is also very important under this step. So now we are going for the certification process, the step where we select the certification body. It can be the same body which is already certified your 9001 if you have got, or 14001, and then we can engage them. So it becomes an integrated audit. We save a lot of man hours in that, and also cost and optimization of resources. Then prepare the employees for the audit. After the internal audit is done, whatever non-conformance we find, whatever issues we find, we discuss with the employees and then prepare them for facing the certification audit, so that the same things are not repeated during that audit. And top management availability support, because they will be doing interview on top management, and how are they encouraging the worker participation. So they want to listen from the top management. That's why top management availability and their support for the audit is very important. And the stage one audit again will be desk or documentation audit, where they will look at your manuals. It can be an integrated manual incorporating the quality, environment, and safety elements put into that. So they will look at the document and whether it addresses the ISO 45001 requirements or not. They will not worry about 9001 and 14001 when they look for this 45001 certification audit. So we have to ensure those elements are addressed. So the beauty is the high level structure helps us to integrate these manuals, so that under the same class of leadership, we can cover all the three management systems together. So that is very important. Then they look at the conformance to ISO 45000 requirements on paper, because they are not seeing the facility yet. They only verify what is on paper. Then they come to the site, they do a stage 2 certification audit. Here it will be an on-site audit, where they will look at conformance to ISO 45001 in practice. That means whether organization is implementing what it is said in the procedure. So that is more important than intention of the organization, which is has to be proven by the organization following. So any actions on non-conformances, if any, will be done by the organization, and then re-audit may be conducted based on the nature of non-conformance, and then certification will be recommended. So this is a process for certification. Now, what is your role in implementation of this ISO 45001? Every employee should know awareness. That is, what is the policy of the organization in terms of occupational health and safety? Then, what are the significant hazards in his work area? Through the hazards identification risk assessment, it will be identified and then given to him so that he is aware of it or she is aware of it. Then what are all the controls in place to keep it under control? The risk is not escalating. Then procedures and work instructions to be followed, and what are the objectives in their department, and what are the management programs, if any. They need to be aware of it, awareness point of view. Once they are aware, they will be able to perform, intimate or notify in case any incidents or non-conformance happening. Sometimes, you should not turn a blind eye. For example, you see a banana peel, you walk away knowingly that somebody is going to get injured. So if you see somebody slipping on it, you will feel bad that I could have prevented it. That is going to be a reactive approach. That's why when something happens, you have to immediately intimate your superiors so that necessary actions can be taken, so nobody is injured in the process. So risk we have to mitigate, and opportunity, if you see any opportunity to improve safety through suggestions and all, immediately implement it. That is your role. And then follow instructions. Whatever procedures given to improve the safety, we have to follow them, and participate in emergency drills whenever it is conducted, and give your feedback on how the drill went so that it can be improved further. Teamwork is very important in this. The hazard identification risk assessment is all about teamwork. You all have to contribute to make it effective documentation. Then incident investigation, you have to give your input. When some incident happened, how can it be done better and how can it be avoided? Then EHS committees, your involvement is very important as a team. That also has to be done. Then safety is everybody's responsibility. It's not the safety department worrying about safety or safety manager worrying about it. Everybody has to look at safety. Then only organization safety performance will improve. Then record, all the records related to the standard has to be legible, and it should be traceable with the proper date and the format number and signature of the person who is recording it. So this is very important. Then as a continual improvement, look at, there is always a better way of doing things. That should be our mantra. So that whatever we are doing, can I do it better than the way, so that I can improve the safety, maybe improve efficiency also in the process. We look at that. That is what is continual improvement. Okay. So this is your role in implementation. Now, benefits of implementing this ISO 45001. One is the standard has got the expertise of more than 70 members who are part of the technical committee. So you get experience and expertise from 70 countries available in the standard for ready implementation in your organization. Improved workplace condition, lessen the risk of injury, illness, because you are identifying hazards and minimizing risk. So people are encouraged to look for hazards. So naturally, workplace condition, safety will be improving, and the risk of injury, illness also will go down. Then limited absenteeism and reduced workplace incident. People are going to be happy to come to work because there is reduced incidents happening, and absenteeism is going to come down. That is very good. Then increased employee morale and motivation. People are happy that the organization is taking care of their health and well-being while they are at work. So they are motivated, and they will contribute more to the organization, which will lead to increased productivity, so that it will be helpful for the organization to improve the cost, reduce cost of insurance premium. Suppose your system is, you've got drills happening, you've got various firefighting systems and other things in place. So the insurance companies are going to give a discount on your premium based on your preparedness to face the consequences. That's why you will see the benefit from that coming out of it. They will also feel lesser risk from insuring these organizations. That's why reduced cost of premiums. Then aligned with the ISO 9001 and ISO 14001 through the high level structure. OHS did not have the high level structure. Now we have ISO 45001, which can be aligned with the rest of the ISO family standards through the high level structure and the similar clause structure. Integration of existing standards with the health and safety is easier, and then it is better equipped to meet legal and other requirements, because every standard we are talking about legal requirement pertaining to the particular standard element. So we are going to be improving our legal compliance by following the standard clauses. Okay. With this, we conclude our webinar on ISO 45001 implementation in your organization. Now, the webinar is open for questions.
I have got few questions in the chat box, sir.
Yes.
I'll continue asking them one by one.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So the first question I have received is, can we implement ISO 45001 in any industry?
Yes, sir. ISO 45000 cutting across industries, any organization can implement ISO 45000 because we are talking about physical and mental health. I was telling a lot of IT companies are going for the standard because they feel the employees are subject to a lot of psychological pressure, which is going to take a toll on their health, as well as they may take some extreme steps in some cases. That's why they want to have a proper counseling and understand the things, so that the psychological hazard is also coming up as a prominent one. So any organization, irrespective of whether they have a lot of equipment or not, human beings, as long as they are working in an organization, they can go for this ISO 45001 standard.
Thank you, sir. The second question I have received is, what are the main points to be addressed in the occupational health and safety policy?
See, the policy, three things very important. One is it should talk about the nature of products and services the organization is offering, because otherwise it becomes a generic policy. We talk about reducing injuries and preventing illness and continual improvement. It becomes a very generic, mundane policy. We want to say what the organization is doing. That's why first thing is the nature of products and services of the organization has to come out in the policy. That is one. Second, the commitment, the word commitment to prevent injury and ill health to employees. So that commitment from the top management, when they sign the policy, they are giving the commitment. That's why the commitment to prevent injury and illness in the organization by implementing various systems, that has to come out. And third important thing is the continual improvement and commitment to comply with the legal and other requirements. So these are the three elements which should be forming part of any occupational health and safety policy, so that they have got a framework which departments can look for and take objectives from the policy and implement it in their departments to improve the safety performance.
Thank you, sir. The third question I have received is, how many members should be there in a health and safety committee?
There is not a fixed member. It varies with the organization strength, but a minimum, there are two from the management side and two from employee side are recommended. So 4 people in a small organization, but then if it is more than 100 people, then this number will increase. But I would say minimum 4 people should be there in a committee for a very small organization, less than or so. More than, then proportionately you will have to increase it. But the participation and the proportion has to be both, employee side as well as management appointee. Both has to be there.
Thank you, sir. We have one last question with us. What is the difference between injury and ill health?
See, injury means we can see blood coming out of our hands, fingers, broken bones. It is acute in nature. People can immediately see what is the injury. Whereas ill health is not seen. Sometimes it may be seen, sometimes it is chronic in nature. Acute is injury, chronic is ill health. So, for example, somebody is exposed to a noisy area and a working environment continuously for 8 hours. So that what happens is hearing impairment, slowly hearing ability reduces, and over a period of time, he will see that problem manifesting. He will start speaking loudly at home. That means he is not able to hear himself. So this is one of the aspect of chronic ill health condition. Maybe cancerous, certain carcinogenic chemicals which will cause some cancer, which will not manifest immediately. At a later part of his life, he will come to know that. So this is a chronic one. The ill health is more of a chronic one, whereas injuries of acute one. Immediately it will manifest and we can see that, and actions can be taken. That's why ISO 45001 focuses both on occupational health and safety. Both are important.
Thank you so much, sir. So we have now finished taking up the questions, and I hope that all the questions has been answered, whatever the participants had put up in the chat box. I can now come to the conclusion of this particular session, and I will start it by thanking Mr. Sitaraman again for for taking out time off his busy schedule and conducting this particular webinar for us today. Again, the knowledge which you have shared on the given topic, the implementation of ISO 45001 was very interesting and was very broad. You didn't speak about the topic generically. You tried to explain each and every fact and concept very clearly, and in a way that even the layman person can understand the concepts of implementation of ISO 45001. So I absolutely thanks you. I thank you that you have put your step forward to produce such a wonderful webinar and made everyone easy to understand this particular topic. I thank all the participants as well for being an active part of this particular webinar as always, and thank you for all your questions which you put up for the session. I hope to see you all again soon with an exciting new session. I wish you all a very best of luck on behalf of TNV Academy for all your future endeavors. It's goodbye from my side now. See you soon again. Thank you so much.
Thanks again to TNV Academy for giving me this wonderful opportunity to share the knowledge what I have gained in the industry for the benefit of everyone present in this webinar. So hope to see you all again in another exciting topic in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.